Welcome to the Startup Grind.
A quick introduction about Startup Grind. Startup Grind is a Google initiative. It happens globally in 150 cities and in 65 countries. Every month there is an event like Startup Grind in one of these 150 cities, and we invite one startup, successful startup, or a venture capitalist, or someone in the startup space, basically have a fireside chat. We also allow startups to give a pitch here for your idea, whatever your ideas are, and whatever help you need in terms of funding, support, any kind of people you want, become co-founders, etc. This is a place where you can network and you can, pitch to people. I am at a loss of how to introduce our guest for the evening. I mean, what is the connection between Harvard and Marvel Comics? Why would anyone have 3 dream jobs in MNCs and one of them in US and a couple of them in India and just chuck it to sell high branded t-shirts? So our guest tonight, Sid Tabaria, has done that in the last 10 years. And it's better, rather than give a long introduction, to let him tell his own story. So let's give him a warm welcome. So you went to US, you graduated there, and you became an investment banker. So what made you kind of throw up that job in, I think, less than a year?
So this was actually after my undergrad. After finishing my high school in Bombay, I went to Austin, Texas for my undergrad. Joined an investment banking firm in San Francisco. And in little less than a year, I realized that the kind of work which I was doing was just very low end and not very stimulating. So I decided to chuck all of that. This was sort of in the late 90s. I was in San Francisco where there was a lot of activity happening in the venture space, and we were a boutique investment bank advising companies to raise capital, which were venture-backed companies. So there was good activity happening, but just the kind of work which I was doing was just not very exciting. So I decided, very quickly in a year that I wanted to sort of move out and came back to India.
Why India? Why not the Silicon Valley?
I think in the long term, I thought that I wanted to be in India. So if I looked at that point of time when I was graduating, I said that I want to be, if I look at a 10-year view, I wanted to be in India. So I said it's better to move out and go back to India rather than spend time in the US, because with every additional year spent in the US, I knew it would be more and more challenging. So I decided to take the plunge quite quickly and moved back in '99 to come to India.
And that's when you started your startup 1.0, if I may say so.
Yeah. So I came back, and at that point of time, India really was not the same economy as it is today, and there were very few jobs. I came from a business family, and sort of the set thing was that to start our own business. I looked around for jobs, but nothing sort of came out meaningful, and I hit upon this idea of starting a music label in '99. And the idea was that we'll create music, we'll record music with artists in India, and sell it online. This was in '99 when I think sort of the internet boom was just about to happen in India, which crashed very quickly also, mind you. So I started that out in '99 and ran the company for 4 years. Changed a little bit in terms of what we did. So when as I said, we started out with wanting to sell online. The online thing did not take off, and quickly moved out of the online space and became more a brick and mortar company selling to mom and pop stores, music houses, as well as managing artists. So it was a very different kind of company than what I had set out to do in '99, and ran this for 4 years.
But did you get funded?
Yes, I did. I raised some angel money in '99, and and that was it actually. So I said I'll raise some money, and then sort of in 2-3 years raise the next round, which became very challenging. The internet, there was an internet bust in early 2000. The music space went through a sort of deep dip. So we found a suitable exit, which was not the best exit which we had anticipated in 2003, but we licensed we had built a catalog of around 70 albums, and we licensed that to Sony Music in 2003. It was something which both me and my investors sort of thought was reasonable, the best we could do at that point of time, and found a reasonable exit after working on it for 4 years.
You did not again think of restarting, considering now the landscape has changed. Things are now more positive online. There is a lot of money chasing now companies which have unique models.
So this was in 2003, so it was like 12 years back, a very different world at that point in time. I just wanted to sort of reflect back on what I had done in the last 5-6 years post my undergrad, and whether to sort of jump into another startup, or go back to a job, or what would I really enjoy. At that point in time I thought, I was still 28 at that point in time, and I said that might be interesting to go back to business school.
Did this startup help you get into Harvard? Was it kind of?
I would like to believe that. My story was a little different than your usual, people who apply. There's a lot of sort of, Harvard has a 900 sort of student class, and my story was a little different from sort of the usual people who apply out there, from people who come from banking and consulting background. So I think it helped,
But after Harvard, you could have written your ticket technically. Then why come back again?
I think I've seen a lot of my friends in the US from my undergrad days. This and I call it the N+1 theory, that let's spend another year in the US and I'll go. Let's spend another year in the US and I'll go. And they've sort of ended up living there 20 years. And it becomes more and more challenging, because the more senior you get in your organization, finding relevant opportunities in India becomes more and more hard. At least this was sort of the phase and trend at that point of time. So I said it's going to become more challenging. So I decided to move back quite quickly, and came back to India, and for a long time joined corporate life actually. After
You still believe in the India story at that time, in spite of the fact that your first startup was not so successful.
Yeah. I did believe in the India story. There were other factors why the first startup was not the most successful, which I had anticipated. But even if I look at my own life, when I was in Disney in India, and the kind of work which we did in India in Disney, versus if I had the same role working in Disney in the US, is very different. Organizations are much larger. You're sort of a cog in the wheel in the organization. Any organization you see in the US, in India versus US, it's just more mature, more saturated in the US, with little less maneuverability. While in India, even if you work in an MNC or you do your own thing, I think there's just many more opportunities, many more businesses which an MNC can also get into, many more new ideas which can be still explored, which have never been explored in India, and that sort of made me come back.
I think you stayed for quite a while with Disney.
Yeah, so I came back and actually did join Disney. I joined McKinsey, and I was there for a little less than 2 years, and then moved to Disney. And I spent around 6.5 years in Disney. Disney was actually a wonderful experience, because when I joined Disney, it was still relatively a small organization in India. Less than $20 million in revenue, 60-70 people. It had just started out. 2005, Disney had started out in India, and I joined them late 2006, early 2007. So we did a lot of things actually. The business grew fivefold or sixfold actually in 5 years. So did multiple things actually when I was there. Started out with biz dev strategy, which was sort of the natural thing to do after consulting. But then moved out and started out the DVD and home entertainment business for Disney. Ran that for around 2 years, and then my last stint in Disney was running the licensing and merchandising business. And I guess that's the connect between Harvard and Marvel Comics, which you put.
And that's also your inspiration for your startup 2.0.
Because I've always sort of thought that when jobs become mundane and not fun, even if I see my first job after undergrad, I decided to move out very quickly as soon as I realized that I'm not enjoying it. And then I said going back to a corporate and starting out all over again at this time would be very, very tiring. And I thought that, that's when I also got the idea that, there's an opportunity of doing something in the merchandising space where I was seeing gaps where demand was high and supply was less. And I said, this is a good time to be moving out.
The trade-off from switching from a very cushy MNC job, well-paying, the comfort zone, the whatever respect that comes with that kind of job, and a startup again, not knowing how successful it will be at that starting point, that's a big trade-off. So, were you ready for that kind of risk? Or what did your family think about it?
My family, my father still, used to tell me that I don't know what you're doing in Disney. You should be working because my dad's always sort of, had his own business. So I think my dad was the most happy when I left Disney. But the underlying thinking was, I kept thinking to myself, what's the worst can happen? I'll start something. If it doesn't work out, getting a job is never going to be difficult in India. So that was the sort of underlying theme and underlying thought when I started out. It was difficult, you're absolutely right. There were days when, people who used to come to my office in Disney, I had to go to their office and wait for a couple of hours to get appointments. So there were these things which used to happen. But I think, you got to sort of set these things aside and look at more the bigger and the larger picture of why you've done and what you've done. The first 6 months was hard, but I must admit.
I believe you started off with some co-founders, and then they kind of got off in the early part of the journey.
Yeah, we were 3 co-founders when we were looking at starting this, and 2 of them, decided against sort of moving out and joining me. So that was a setback because we had decided to move out together. We had decided that we would be when we were talking to our investors. We had the story where 3 of us were together, and them moving out was and it happened sequentially. One moved out and then another moved out. So I had to give 2 bad news to all the investors when I was speaking to them. So that was a tough part. There were a few investors who sort of came in and came out.
So you got your funding the first round before you kind of actually sold the first t-shirt, let's put it that way. But yet it took you 6 months to get that, considering your background, the fact that you are an ex-Harvard, McKinsey, Walt Disney.
Yeah, I thought it would be easy, but it was not.
Because a lot of startups think,
yeah.
So like an IIT, IIM is a given. You will get funding, You just have to flash the degree.
Yeah.
So that's the norm today.
Yeah, so I thought that things would be easy, but I managed to sort of pull in a small round of funding before I started out. Put in some of my own capital, which gave the investors a little bit more comfort with my skill in the game.
Just for the startups here, what was the stumbling block in getting that first round? Was it the idea that they did not buy into the idea?
No.
Was it the fact that age? Because whatever, you started at a later age. Then
So I think there were 2 or 3 things, right? One is, when I was leaving Disney, when I thought that I would be leaving Disney, I started looking for capital. Trying to plan that the day I leave and put in my papers, I'll have capital and I'll be able to start. I think that's a big mistake which people make. Because I think investors are quite, concerned where you're trying to sort of put your legs in an MNC as well as sort of trying to come out. So I think the day I left and I said, I put in my papers, my last day is over and I'm out, the equation of the dialogue changed. So I think that was sort of learning one. I don't think it was the idea so much the idea. I think it was just to put in capital on just a presentation where I had not even set up an office, I had not even hired a team. It was actually just a PowerPoint presentation. And things have actually changed a lot in the last 2 years also. Mumbai Angels was sort of the only network at that point in time. There were not a lot of angels who were looking at investing. And in the last 24 months also, there's been quite a shift. So I think that was also a thing. I think people and funds want that you start something, you put some things together, and then they get a little bit more comfortable. I was fortunate, I found Bloom. I knew Karthik for a long time. I had a relationship with him. He had bought into the idea quite earlier on. And once I had a few investors and angels coming in, that's when he got comfort also and decided to put in.
This is very interesting that you have to take that leap of faith. So unless you lose sight of the shore, you cannot discover new horizons. So that's the saying that goes. So this is what Sid did here. Coming back to your venture, let's talk a little bit about Vox. So first of all, why the name Vox Pop? Maybe you throw some light on that.
We got the URL, so I think.
Yeah, but that's the odd one.
Yeah,
Vox Pop.
Vox Pop means in Latin voice of the people. And the thought was that every t-shirt represents one's voice, one's identity. and one's expression, and that's why we thought of putting Vox Pop as a name.
So the users resonate now with that? Do they resonate or?
We have not yet communicated sort of the connection of
Message.
Vox Pop to the T-shirt, which our next marketing campaign is going to be. But yeah, so I don't think that connect is still there.
But you let people design their own, T-shirts and kind of run.
Yeah, so obviously the business is has 2-3 elements to it. One is, I think the underlying theme when we started out was that we wanted to take iconic brands and put them on T-shirts for the youth in India as well as for kids. So we partnered, obviously I had a relationship with Disney and my licensing days, so we got Disney and Marvel on board quite quickly. But then we built a portfolio of around 8 to 10 brands. So that was sort of the starting point. And then built layers to the business also. So when we started out, we had this crowdsourcing idea where we allowed consumers and designers to come in and design their T-shirts and put it up, and then we used to curate and take the best T-shirt design and then start selling it. And now we've sort of evolved that a little bit more to allow designers to come, make their customized T-shirt as well as sell it to their friends and family and their network. And if they meet a certain minimum order, we print it and we manage the supply chain. So there is a business where we create our own T-shirts with our own brand, with our own partner brands, as well as some designers who we work with exclusively. And then we also have a platform, tech platform for designers. It could be a restaurant, it could be a bar, it could be Startup Grind, who just wants to design their own T-shirts for their network and fans. But just finds it very challenging, and we thought that a technology platform could solve that. So that's another part of the business which we run also.
There was a company called Inkfruit some few years back which used to have this where you could upload your design and they would print it and give it. So how do you differentiate yourself from Inkfruit other than the brands that you have like Marvel?
So Inkfruit used to have designers put in any design and then they used to take it up and print it. I think one of our differentiation is the partner brands which we have. We also don't work with any designer which uploads their designs, at least for our own brand. We've signed, we have a network of around 20-25 designers who we work with exclusively. I think one of the things which we really want to focus on is just the design element of the T-shirt. The print and the design which goes on the chest and the print should be very, very different. And it should be like a piece of art.
You're not like a Tantra which is purely into ethnic, they have ethnic designs.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are a lot of T-shirt brands in India. We all know that. There are many T-shirt brands which are homegrown T-shirt brands in India which have started out and sell offline distribution. In the last 3 years, there's been a lot of T-shirt brands which have started online. And I think a lot of them sort of start competing at the price point level, right? Sort of sub 500 rupee T-shirts in India. And I think what we want to do is with our brand partners, with our design partners, give something more to the consumer, just more aspirational, where they're getting some, good designs and B access to these brands, yet in a value sort of price. Somewhere between T-shirt brands like a Tommy Hilfiger or a Paul Smith, which are anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000, and T-shirt brands like Tantra, which sort of sells some 500. We want to be between that. Get entertainment brands, get their IP, and start putting it on T-shirts.
So if I understand rightly, you want to create a brand which is niche, which is segmented, and is that a reason why you don't also sell in the marketplaces?
Actually, when I started out, we were open to selling it to every retailer and distributor and marketplace. The thinking is that we own the brand, and the more the distribution we get, the better it is. The challenge in India has always been that the distribution has not been very easy for brands. It's not been very, from a financial perspective, it's not been manageable, just in terms of the kind of terms which we get. So from that perspective, we've been a little bit more prudent in approaching most of the distributors and partnering with more select retailers, working with them more exclusively. So the approach has been a little bit more strategic. rather than sort of opening it out to everyone. So we've just recently, last month, partnered with Amazon and working with them a little bit more exclusively. We've got already 100 designs with Amazon. In March end, we are going to launch the merchandise of Avengers 2, which is going to release end of April. And it's also going to be on our platform, it's also going to be on Amazon. So, when you start working exclusively with them, there are a lot of benefits which we get also, in terms of promotions, in terms of marketing, in terms of discoverability, which, if you start selling on every marketplace, they're sort of listed and
It dilutes your brand.
yeah, and it's not dilution. I don't think consumers get to know, right? And how do they know there's Vox Pop selling out there? Because the brand is still new, the brand is still young, and we're still building it. So if you start working more exclusively, then the retail partner also helps you in reaching out to a wider base of consumers.
A lot of your processes are outsourced.
Yeah.
So what is that again? How do you manage all the pieces of the puzzle?
It is taxing, but I think I'm a big believer of sort of getting in specialized people for jobs, which just adds a lot more value. And especially in a startup, it's not very easy to recruit and hire people when you're starting up and get the best people. And so we've, at least our functions like finance, accounting, tech, even creatives which we create for our marketing and campaign. We've outsourced these elements because we can get access to really rich talent and manage these much better as opposed to getting building teams internally. So hiring is tough, attrition is high, and you don't get the best people also. So with these thinking, we said that for the first sort of 18, 24 months or even 36 months, we'll keep some of these functions outsourced. And as we start scaling up, we might in-house a few things. So that's why I've kept it outsourced. And it's, and you get sort of people then to manage these people and agencies and external partners who you work with. And it's worked out fine right now. So, we've got a great tech partner who, has got a team dedicated to us, who works for all our technology, who's built all our technology and manages that. Our creative agency does all our marketing collaterals. We've got a finance and accounting team which looks at all our sort of, day-to-day accounting, compliance. And there are people sitting in our office, 1 or 2 people from their agency, if we need anything. And I think the other thing which startups don't realize is that, you can't do an apples to apples comparison in costs. It's just not salary, because once you hire a person, there are so many unrelated costs which you have to add up, and sometimes it just becomes more and more expensive to in-house people in your agency.
So you think that initially the cost of outsourcing may look high, but eventually it kind of levels out or probably gets cheaper with the best results?
It looks high if you just compare dollar to dollar value, but I don't think that's the right way to do it. Because you have people sitting, you have to take larger offices, you have to manage for attrition, there are HR issues, there are time taken to hire again. These things are add up the cost quite significantly. And if you add these hidden costs which you don't look at, and then to add to that the kind of talent you get also, I think it's much better.
What about production and logistics? Because those are also two key elements.
Yeah, so we believe that what are our core functions? Our core functions are our operations, because we need to provide t-shirts. Because of our e-commerce business, we need to have things delivered at the right time. So we've got our operations team in-house, customer service in-house, production which we do for our t-shirts in-house because we need these. And when I mean in-house is there are people who are managing it, but I think we've got some strong teams to manage those outsourced partners.
Any plans to do an offline in future, like stores or franchising model across the country?
Not right now. I think it's a different business. It's quite capital intensive. I think there's enough momentum which is there in the e-commerce space. The kind of access it gives, the kind of reach it gives, it's quite unbelievable. And the trade had such issues and legacies which they had built in. That ये brand, अरे राजस्थान में नहीं बिकेगा, ये 700 रुपए की चीज़ नहीं बिकेगी इधर, ये कलर चलता नहीं है, and you have to start convincing the trade to reach out to the consumer, and they become bottlenecks, which I realized. And today 40-45% of our business comes from smaller cities. 60% does come from our sort of top 6-8 metros, but there's a pretty large business which comes from, and I think e-commerce gives you that leeway to just reach out to them directly, which, you know, so and there's enough momentum and, you know.
So tell more the demographics in terms of age, gender.
Our focus is 18 to 28 target group. Sweet spot is 18 to 22, 23.
How the scale up been, if I say in percentage terms, month on month or maybe a year and year on year?
So, I mean, it's been only 5 quarters, but quarter on quarter we're growing at 100% per quarter. Now I sense there is some method coming. The team is putting, you know, the team has come together. We've got a few senior people now. You know, it took some time. E-commerce was a new space for me. T-shirts was a new space for me. Supply, production was a new space for me. Designing was a new space for me. So learning all of this also took some time. But I think now, you know, things seem to at least be in control on the day-to-day level in terms of, you know, from an operational perspective and production perspective, which a few senior people in our team to start thinking of the next 12 months.
You think the next round would be easier to raise, considering now you are scaling up so fast and you have something to prove now on the ground there?
You know, obviously it's a lot easier than what it was 18 months back when I was starting out, because there's a proven business model, there is proven track record, but this is a very, very dynamic environment and things change quite rapidly every week, I think so. So it's tough to say, it's tough to answer that question.
And what is the vision now for the next 2 years? I mean, where do you see yourself at the end of maybe 2016? Where do you see Vox going?
So I think one of the things which we are doing is that you know, we want to focus a lot of our energies on building a brand which resonates and equates to good brand, a youth brand for t-shirts and apparel and accessories. And I think once we start doing that, you know, I think the financials will take care of itself. So in the e-commerce space, if I see a lot of people have taken the route of building brands around which are very, very transactional in nature. So, you know, you shout out loudly that my discount is going on and you get consumers in at that point of time. It's good. I think those are the rules of the game, and that's how things are working right now. But I think if you want to sustain yourself over the next 2 to 5 years, there should be some emotional need for the consumer to come back to your site also.
Do you believe in losing money on every product you sell?
No, we don't. I think my Marwadi gene doesn't allow me to do that. But, so we don't actually. Our first, there are some months which are bad because marketing is also very volatile. Facebook and Google keep changing their algorithms quite rapidly. So some months are bad, but you know, given that we're a private label business, our economics are quite different. We make and sell, we're not just retailing. So we have enough of a margin play to work with. We want to be very sharply focused on the product categories we do. We want to be very sharply focused on the geography which we want to work on. As you said earlier on, that why don't you look at this product, or why don't you expand your product beyond t-shirts? There is a, you know, temptation to start. You know, we have a brand like Batman, we can start plastering it on 15 other products. But I think, you know, again, it's just about focus.
The license costs are fixed, so spreading it over a large volume or a large number of products, doesn't it make business sense?
Well, there are other challenges also. Inventory is a challenge, margin is a challenge, supply chain is a challenge. Mathematically, you're right, but if you start adding business things to that I think would be more and more challenging.
So looking back now, 18 months, you think we made the right decision to jump into this?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm enjoying right now what I'm doing. You know, every day is quite hectic, quite you know, a lot of thinking to be done every day. What I did enjoy in the first 6 months was I had to be very, 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 very hands-on. You don't get the right people on your team, and you end up doing everything. So that took a lot of time to adjust. But now I think, you know, I've gotten better at it, and also, you know, with time, better people have come on board. So I'm definitely enjoying it more and more with every day.
You would have benefited if your co-founders had continued this journey with you?
Co-founders are a big help. I think every mistake I made in my first entrepreneurial venture, I decided there were 2 or 3 things which I said I will never do in my next entrepreneurial venture. One was I will never start alone. Second, I said I will never bootstrap. And I ended up doing all of those things again. So I actually advise that you should definitely have a co-founder. It really helps in the first 12 months, 18 months when you're building, to share pains, to share joys, to manage work, which can get quite challenging if you don't have a co-founder.
Did they ever come back later on?
No, I think
like,
no.
jump
We're
on
still
board?
friends. We're still friends. It just
You
didn't
never
work
wanted-
out. No, it just didn't work out, and I could understand their anxiety levels at that point in time also. So.
Any mistakes that you made which you regret, which you'd like to share, maybe help some other startups out here?
As I just said, one other thing was that the more years of experience you get in terms of running your businesses, you take a lot of things for granted. Actually, I took a lot of things for granted in the first 6-9 months. That he's my operations person. I can give him this, and he'll do it, and he'll finish the job. But never happened. And there were times when I realized that after 1 month or 1.5 months, there was a lot of mess. So I think one needs to be really, really hands-on in the first 12 months, and I think I still continue to be quite hands-on. I think that was a big change in my orientation. When I looked at my first 6 months when I started out, there were so many changes which happened. But I think the underlying thought was that I want to get started, and I think that's something which I'm quite happy with the way things happened out and what the focus was there, because even though we didn't get the right the co-founders left, we didn't get the right funding, the investors were there, backed out. The orientation was that whatever we can tie up, whatever I can tie up at this point in time, let's tie that up and start. Because I think once you start, you put your business together, you get your platform, you start selling, you get your first revenue. You need to reach that milestone quite quickly. And I think that should be the focus always. Because I think other things then over time take care of themselves. I see a lot of entrepreneurs who say, I have like a few friends also who say that he offered me a term sheet but the dilution was too much. And I'm like, in the larger scheme of things, these things are not going to matter over a 5-7 year horizon. If things go well, these things won't matter. So I think the objective should be to start quite quickly, which I think we reasonably did that all right in the first 6-9 months.
In your opinion, after doing 2 startups, is the key ingredient for success? Is it the power of the idea? Is it your execution ability? Is it the ability to raise funds quickly?
To be in the right place at the right time. Seriously.
But how does one do that? Sorry.
It's a lot of factors. I think I don't think I can pinpoint this to an idea or anything. I think if I'd taken the same idea 2 years prior, I would have got a very different round of funding than what I took in 2013. And these things are outside your control. So I think for me it is really about you'll be given a situation, but managing that, reacting to that, the way you respond to that on a day-to-day basis, I think is the only thing which is in your control. And to do that right, to keep doing that on a day-to-day basis is something which I think one should. So I would probably say in your 3 things which you said, execution is definitely the most important thing, which is sort of responding to these, to these situations on a day-to-day basis, because these situations change very, very rapidly. And who can do that better would be the winner, I think so, because ideas is definitely not the thing. Funding definitely helps. If you raise enough capital, I think that should be a constant endeavor. And I remember one of my friends telling me that I think when I left my job to start my own company, he said, now you start, when you were working for someone else, you were thinking of running your P&L and growing that. Now you need to wear that hat and keep doing that, but also at the same time wear a hat of a deal maker. And you need to always be thinking of what deals you should be doing with partners, with strategic alliances, with investors, and that's something which you should be thinking every day. should not be, oh, this is a milestone, I've raised capital, now I'll come back to it 12 months back. Which I think was very useful advice, which you should keep thinking, because getting the right partners, getting the right alliance partners, getting the right investors, and keep doing that always is something which is true to an entrepreneur also.
What is that one thing that you did differently from your first startup, Dhadkan?
I think just with all my learnings, it's very difficult to pinpoint what is something which I did different. I think there were a lot of things which I did different in this thing. I was, obviously with all my learnings from my first startup, with my experiences at McKinsey and Disney, I think it was just more richer when I started this out. Also, the network was very different. When I started out my first startup, I was 1 year out of college, so the network was very different. What I had in my sort of venture one versus this venture. So I think it's a multiple. I don't think I can pinpoint of one thing which I did.
So use a pun. What gets your Dhadkan up? What makes you jump up in the bed in the morning? What is it about walks that keeps you running?
I think what keeps me thinking is scale. How do you keep achieving scale and growing this? How do you want to? What should we be doing to keep growing this quarter on quarter? You can't say that I've done this and sort of achieved this. I think what would our team need to do to keep growing? What do we need to do in terms of products, in terms of designs, in terms of brand partnerships, in terms of the team we have internally, what kind of people we need? There's a lot of thinking which one needs to do to keep looking at this, to keep growing at the same rate what we've been doing in the last 4 quarters. So that's what keeps me up in the night also, and I wake up to that also.
What if you end up getting bored with this one?
I find it difficult to get bored of things which is so close. I think one needs to think about things more, and I am very practical in terms of what needs to be done with this venture also, which will be the most efficient for both me as well as the investors who put in their money in this venture. So I don't think boredom is going to be part of that end game. I think it might be other things which people have to take a practical view to things. But I don't think boredom is definitely going to be one of the factors. I'm quite attached to this. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I've got a good team going. And I think there's a lot of work to be done.
Anything that you would like to share which can motivate them, inspire them?
I seriously think one should be taking the plunge, and I think getting started quickly is the best thing one can do. Also, keep thinking that the worst case situation is not so bad. So I think that's something which one should keep in mind, and get started and move fast.
So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was really lovely.